All right, everyone. There were actually a lot of trending topics yesterday. It was like a rapid fire. It's like Clinton, and then it's Trump talking about pardons, and then it's the Supreme Court cake shit. It's like in the course of 48 hours, there have been like 8 or 9 things at the top of the news cycle. But I figured first today I'd talk about the first thing that I really was made aware of, which was the Supreme Court sort of cake stuff. A decision was made 7-2, which is not narrow. And by the way, I'm aware of the fact that it was basically CNN's refusal to use better grammar in their title that sparked this whole debate about whether or not it was proper to use the term narrow in that context. The way the CNN title looked, you would think that by narrow they were indicating the 7-2 split of the decision itself. That's not narrow. 5-4 is narrow. 7-2 is not. But anyway, it's a narrow decision in the sense that the actual constitutional ramifications of the sort of decision itself that they handed down are relatively limited. They refuse to address the larger question, nationally speaking, and put it to rest over whether it was acceptable for a business in a general sense to refuse to do service with a person on a religious basis. Which, by the way, is the right decision to make. It doesn't need to be addressed by the Supreme Court. It should be handled at a lower level. But what the decision does do is it makes it clear. It does set somewhat of a precedent. In the opinion of 7 of the 9 justices, it was unconstitutional that this particular Christian bakery was being basically sued and harassed by the state of Colorado under laws that it has against discrimination because they're specific anti-discrimination laws. And this was Kennedy's statement, I believe. Their specific anti-discrimination laws are themselves unlawful. That sets a pretty good precedent for where the Supreme Court is likely to go from here if it has to hear a similar case again, and it probably will. Some people were worried. They were like, oh, now the decision will end up being made by a liberal court. I don't think you understand the dynamics of how the Supreme Court works. Trump is likely to replace Ginsburg at some point with someone who's probably going to be in the camp of the center left. So you're going to be replacing one of the most far-left justices we've ever seen with someone who's going to be probably a slightly right-wing moderate. I don't think you have to worry about the final decision. You know, Obama didn't get Garland, and so it's not going to be a problem. Probably Trump gets a second term. He probably gets 2 more justices than 2. You do realize what their age is, correct? You do realize that I think 4 of the justices are in their 80s, and I think all but one of the rest of them are in their 70s. I think there's only one of them that actually doesn't count as elderly at this point. I think the chief judge, Kagan actually, I believe. I think she's in her 50s if I remember correctly. And I think the chief justice is like in his mid 60s. I don't know. I know that several of them though are literally geriatric. Ginsburg better than everybody else. This decision does therefore set a mild precedent. It just doesn't put the entire issue to rest. Now, here are my thoughts on the decision from my own perspective. I'm totally for gay rights, but I'm also for the right of people to manage their business. And I see, here's where I deviate slightly from some. And I know this doesn't have a legal basis, although it could be put in the Constitution. I think there's a big fucking difference between a monopolistic big company, you know, it might be the only company supplying a good or service for 100 miles around, and a small business that's being managed. You know, you've got Ma and Pa, they have their bookstore, and they live in the loft above the store. They have a home office or something. It's like, I work from home. Like, this is technically my business place, but it's also where I have my residence. There's a big difference between that kind of business and something more monopolistic. You'd think of the tech world right now. There's a debate raging over the proper role of regulating speech on a site like YouTube or Facebook. Now, of course, I don't think they should regulate it much at all. I think it should basically be culled down to, is it illegal under U.S. law, or is it so disruptive that it is preventing others from speaking, therefore creating a victim? Otherwise, no. Being mildly offensive is not creating a victim. Someone just doesn't watch your video. It's a little bit different than like spamming videos or something and making the site unusable. Therefore, spam, of course, can continue to be regulated for the mere purposes of efficiency and for debate and discourse. No, that would be the NAP-derived sort of statement about it. It does if you continuously harass somebody. even in a non-criminal way. You haven't issued a credible threat or whatever, but you're preventing them from living their life. You're depriving them of their pursuit of happiness in a roundabout way. So in one sense, I would say that there's a big difference between a monopolistic, like a tech firm, a huge business, corporations are not people, in other words, and a local business as one fucking employee, or it's run by a single family. That should be handled differently for legal purposes. If a bakery doesn't want to bake a certain cake, use a different bakery. Why would you want to give them your money in the first place? See, we're a frivolous lawsuit happy culture, and that's why we have these national debates that don't really need to be had, because there's really no significant inconvenience of this particular gay couple or any other by not being able to use one bakery that they can then just boycott. Take to the internet and say, hey, these are homophobes, don't do business with them. There you go. You've had your cake and now you can eat it too. I would also submit another interesting thing. Let's say I, as a straight male, were to go to the same bakery and say, I want a gay wedding cake. Now, I'm not gay. They're going to tell me no. Are they discriminating against me based on my orientation? No, I'm not gay. So then there has to be something else that they are having a problem with. It's the specific act. They don't have a problem with me being gay. If a person is gay, they can walk in and get any other cake that they happen to want. So what's the problem? I just don't understand where the discrimination specifically is and why it is significant enough to rise to the level of needing a national debate. It's not like the gay marriage debate. The gay marriage debate that people are conflating with this as though there was any fucking similarity at all had to do with the government discriminating against citizens in a totally legal capacity in the issuance of state marriage contracts. It is completely different than the private edifice of a brick and mortar bakery. There is no comparison between the two. There are things that private individuals can do that the government cannot. The government cannot discriminate against citizens. It has to treat them equally. Likewise, how is it equal treatment under the law? Can you imagine? What if it were a Jewish bakery and someone's there and they're like, hey, I want you to sprinkle this cake with ashes and have a little chocolate barbed wire fence around the outside because I'm celebrating Adolf Hitler's birthday. What do you think would happen? Do you honestly think in a million years it would have gone before the Supreme Court at all? What if somebody went to an Islamic bakery and they're like, hey, I want this cake with bacon strips fried onto the top. I want you to make it, but you're not going to be able to outsource this. That's discriminatory too. You're ridiculing me. So you're going to have to bake the fucking cake. Would you tell them to bake the fucking cake? I don't think a lot of people would. I think that we need to have a little bit of deference for our local business people. If you don't like them, if they've refused you service or you feel that they've mistreated you, go ahead by all means. Leave a negative review on their Facebook page or whatever. Send out an angry tweet. Do your craptivism thing and start a boycott if you want to. But dragging them before SCOTUS was a big mistake, and now you pay the price for that. Because when, inevitably, in due time, another frivolous lawsuit crops up, goes before the Supreme Court again, my high expectation is that they're going to side more or less with businesses. They're going to say, yes, indeed, businesses do have the right, in the normal context of the day's proceedings, they have the right to avoid doing things that are against their deeply held religious beliefs. I would say that it probably extends further. It's like somebody was saying one of those Democratic Twitter pages that represent, some niche of the progressive movement. They're like, oh, so that means I can refuse service to Trump fans. Haha. No, but it does mean that if they ask you to bake a MAGA cake, there's now a bit of a precedent for you saying no because you find that unconscionable. And if they don't like it, let them use a different bakery. Problem solved. What? There's one bakery in the world. You can order a fucking custom-made cake online. What the hell is the problem? In the age of the internet, as far as the brick-and-mortar acquisition of goods, it barely matters. The only real battle we need to have is over human communication. I prefer a society in which people can communicate openly and freely, as long as they're not unduly disrupting others or defaming or credible threat or something like that. As long as they're not doing that, if it's not illegal under U.S. law, who fucking cares? I would say there's one other component here too. As a lover of capitalism, real capitalism is in productive aspect. I'm not talking about the fake capitalism of D.C. with its heavy intervention and high tax model. I'm talking about the business side, the productive aspect of society. If you're running a business and you're refusing to do business with people, you are a bad business person. I'm just going to put that out there. Like if I had a bakery, I don't care. I don't care what kind of message you want on your cake. You want me to smash a dildo into the middle of the cake? Fucking I don't care. You want a cake for your polygamous, pseudo wedding? Okay, that's fine. You want a cake that says, I hate police? Okay. You want a cake that says, is just a list of slurs? You want a cake that says, hey, this bakery sucks? Okay, you're still paying me? You're engaging in business with me? Fine, I'm making money off of you. I don't care what your message is. Unless it's illegal under US law or something. Hey, silkscreen this revenge porn onto my cake. No, okay, I'm going to have to avoid that one. That's about all. Peace out.